produced in her understanding. When Vitagliani opened the first bottle of champagne, Sarrasine read in his neighbor's eyes a shrinking dread of the report caused by the release of the gas. The involuntary shudder of that thoroughly feminine temperament was interpreted by the amorous artist as indicating extreme delicacy of feeling. This weakness delighted the Frenchman. There is so much of the element of protection in a man's love. You may make use of my power as a shield. Is not that sentence written at the root of all declarations of love? Sarrasine, who was too passionately in love to make fine speeches to the fair Italian, was, like all lovers, grave, jovial, meditative by turns. Although he seemed to listen to his guests, he did not hear a word they said. He was so wrapped up in the pleasure of sitting by her side, of touching her hand, of waiting on her. He was swimming in a sea of concealed joy. Despite the eloquence of divers glances they exchanged, he was amazed at La Zambinella's continued reserve toward him. She had begun, it was true, by touching his foot with hers, and stimulating his passion with the mischievous pleasure of a woman who is free and in love. But she had suddenly enveloped herself in maidenly modesty, after she had heard Sarrasine relate an incident which illustrated the extreme violence of his temper. When the supper became a debauch, the guests began to sing, inspired by the Peralta and the Pedro Ximenes. There were fascinating duets, Calabrian ballads, Spanish sequidillas, the Neapolitan canzonettes. Drunkenness was in all eyes, in the music, in the hearts and voices of the guests. There was a sudden overflow of bewitching vivacity, of cordial unconstraint, of Italian good nature, of which no words can convey an idea to those who know only the evening parties of Paris, the routs of London, or the clubs of Vienna. Jests and words of love flew from side to side like bullets in a battle, amid laughter, impieties, invocations to the Blessed Virgin or the Bambino. One man lay on a sofa and fell asleep. A young woman listened to a declaration, unconscious that she was spilling Xeres wine on the tablecloth. Amid all this confusion, La Zambinella, as if terror-stricken, seemed lost in thought. She refused to drink, but ate perhaps a little too much. But gluttony is attractive in women, it is said. Sarrasine, admiring his mistress's modesty, indulged in serious reflections concerning the future. "She desires to be married, I presume," he said to himself. Thereupon he abandoned himself to blissful anticipations of marriage with her. It seemed to him that his whole life would be too short to exhaust the living spring of happiness which he found in the depths of his heart. Vitagliani, who sat on his other side, filled his glass so often that, about 3 a.m, Sarrasine, while not absolutely drunk, was powerless to resist his delirious passion. In a moment of frenzy he seized the woman and carried her to a sort of boudoir which opened from the salon, and toward which he had more than once turned his eyes. The Italian was armed with a dagger. "If you come near me," she said, "I shall be compelled to plunge this blade into your heart. Go! You would despise me. I have conceived too great a respect for your character to abandon myself to you thus. I do not choose to destroy the sentiment with which you honor me." "Ah," said Sarrasine, "to stimulate a passion is a poor way to extinguish it. Are you already so corrupt that, being old in heart, you act like a young prostitute who inflames the emotions in which she trades?" "Why, this is Friday," she replied, alarmed by the Frenchman's violence. Sarrasine, who was not piously inclined, began to laugh. La Zambinella gave a bound like a young deer and darted into the salon. When Sarrasine appeared, running after her, he was welcomed by a roar of infernal laughter. He saw La Zambinella swooning on a sofa. She was very pale, as if exhausted by the extraordinary effort she had made. Although Sarrasine knew but little Italian, he understood his mistress when she said to Vitigliani in a low voice, "But he will kill me." This strange scene abashed the sculptor. His reason returned. He stood still for a moment, then he recovered his speech, sat down beside his mistress, and assured her of his profound respect. He found strength to hold his passion in check while talking to her in the most exalted strain, and to describe his love he displayed all the treasures of eloquence, that sorcerer, that friendly interpreter whom women rarely refuse to believe. When the first rays of dawn surprised the boon companions, some woman suggested that they go to Frascati. One and all welcomed with loud applause the idea of passing the day at Villa Ludovisi. Vitagliani went down to hire carriages. Sarrasine had the good fortune to drive La Zambinella in a phaeton. When they had left Rome behind, the merriment of the party, repressed for a moment by the battle which they had all been fighting against drowsiness, suddenly awoke. All, men and women alike, seemed accustomed to that strange life, that constant round of pleasure, that artistic energy which makes of life one never-ending fete, where laughter reigns, unchecked by fear of the future. The sculptor's companion was the only one who seemed out of spirits. "Are you ill?" Sarrasine asked her. "Would you prefer to go home?" "I am not strong enough to stand all this dissipation," she replied. "I have to be very careful, but I feel so happy with you. Except for you, I should not have remained to this supper. A night like this takes away all my freshness." "You are so delicate," rejoined Sarrasine, gazing in rapture at the charming creature's dainty features. "Dissipation ruins my voice." "Now that we are alone," cried the artist, "and that you no longer have reason to fear the effervescence of my passion, tell me that you love me." "Why?" said she. "For what good purpose? You think me pretty, but you're a Frenchman, and your fancy will pass away. Ah, you would not love me as I should like to be loved." "How?" "How? Purely, with no mingling of vulgar passion. I abhor men even more, perhaps, than I hate women. I need to take refuge in friendship. The world is a desert to me. I am an accursed creature, doomed to understand happiness, to feel it, to desire it, and, like many, many others, compelled to see it always fly from me. Remember, Signor, that I have not deceived you. I forbid you to love me. I can be a devoted friend to you, for I admire your strength of will and your character. If I need a brother, a protector, be both of these to me, but nothing more." "And not love you?" cried Sarrasine. "But you are my life, my happiness, dear angel." "If I should say a word, you would spurn me with horror." "Coquette, nothing can frighten me. Tell me that you will cost me my whole future, that I will die 2 months hence, and I shall be damned for having kissed you but once." And he kissed her, despite La Zambinella's efforts to avoid that passionate caress. "Tell me that you are a demon, that I must give you my fortune, my name, all my renown. Would you have me cease to be a sculptor? Speak!" "Suppose I were not a woman?" queried La Zambinella, timidly, in a sweet, silvery voice. "A merry jest!" cried Sarrasine. "Think you that you can deceive an artist's eye? Have I not for 10 days past admired, examined, devoured thy perfections? None but a woman could have this soft and beautifully rounded arm, these graceful outlines. Ha, ha! You seek compliments. She smiled.